So after 3 whole days of sifting through all sorts of images, videos, stories, articles, reports, podcasts, and driving myself a bit crazy and pushing myself into a state of depression, I learned that there's a community of illustrators in or Ukrainian illustrators, young Ukrainian illustrators. And when I say young, most of them in their 20s, that's young to me. And they've been capturing their emotions and their thoughts and their experiences and sharing them through their work. And in a moment, I'm going to introduce you to 4 of them. I'm going to introduce you to Romana, Olga, um, Yeveina, I don't know if I've got her name right, and Maria. And you're going to meet them through their work. But just before I do so, let's just work through this lesson plan. Let me show you how this is going to work, all right? Now, yes. So, Ukrainian illustrators Instagram. Now, I'm going to pretend that you're my students, okay? Behave. And you're going to have to forgive me for it. I hope I'm not going to patronize you. The first part of this will not work for you because you know where we're going. But what you're going to do is you're going to show your students some images and you're going to ask them to guess or suggest what they have in common. So let me show you some of these images. Image number 1 looks like this. And you could ask your students to guess. So you could ask them questions like, what do you see here? Tell me what you see. Say what you see. What do you think it means? What's the story behind it, perhaps? What does this image that you see have in common with this image? Maybe it was created by the same person. It wasn't. And there's actually a number of things that these images have in common. And by the way, bear in mind that your students don't know that this has got anything to do with Ukraine. They don't know it's got anything to do with illustrators. So what do these images have in common? Well, number 1, they're all the genre. They are illustrations. They're illustrations. That's a giveaway, isn't it? This third one makes it easy. Or at least easier. So number 1, they're all illustrations. Number 2, they have all been created by Ukrainian illustrators. Number 3, they are all Ukrainian illustrators that share their work on Instagram. And number 4, they have all been created, these illustrations have all been created in the last 3 weeks since Putin began his invasion on their country. So that's the way in. It's very important, I think, that your students get to see some example illustrations so they have an idea for the genre of the type of image that we're working with. Is on a more general level, we can call them artists, but as far as I'm aware, all of these professionals refer to themselves as illustrators. We tend to think of illustrators of people who create illustrations for books, illustrations to accompany text, to enhance the text. And in this case, they're very specifically illustrating their experiences, their emotions, and their thoughts. And I think that's very important. Now, Elaine, this is a please. This is a plea to close the sky. Absolutely, as was the first one. In fact, basically, what I've got for you is 4 more illustrations. I mentioned, didn't I, that you're going to meet Romana, Olga, Yeveina. Have I pronounced her name right? And Maria. But rather than showing you their illustrations, I'm going to introduce you to them through the stories that they share, all right? And what you're going to do is you're going to listen to the stories and you're going to try and visualize the illustrations. How does that sound? So I'm going to introduce you to these illustrators via their stories. You're going to read and listen to their stories and start to think about the illustrations. So let's And that's going to be your student's task. So let's start with an example. And this one comes from Veronica. And she says, today is the 9th day of Putin's war against Ukraine. So this must have been about 10 days ago that she wrote this. I continue doing everything possible and impossible to stop it. My family decided to stay in Kyiv. They are my heroes. My mum bakes bread and helps older people in the building. Dad and neighbours defend our streets from looters. Granny darns socks to keep herself busy. The air raid warnings don't shock anymore because people hear them at least 10 times a day. I've lost contact with several of my friends and relatives, but there's hope they survived. Spring is coming. Apricot trees in our courtyard will bloom soon. My daily conversation with my mum ends like this. Tomorrow will be better. Hold on. I hope so. My kotyik. Ina, what is kotyik in Ukrainian? Because it's Veronica's second name, Veronica Kotyik. And I don't know if I've pronounced it correctly, but I hope so, my kotyik. I actually happen to know that kotyik is Ukrainian for kitty cat. Yes, Tamar knows too, of course. So small cat. And so, this is Veronica's story. And I want you to think, just imagine Veronica's a professional illustrator. Put yourself into your shoes. I wonder how many times a day do you hear air raid warnings, Ina? And what do you think her illustration looks like? What do you think she's included any people? What about location and places? What's happening in her illustration? What are the actions? What's going on? What about colors? What about composition? What about emotion? And maybe there's some text, maybe some words and phrases, because illustrators can, they can include words and phrases and text, can't they? So what do you think it looks like? And maybe you could just think about this and type in some of your ideas. They don't have to be too long, maybe just a few phrases, trying to put into your own words what you think Veronica's illustration looks like. Catherine sees dark colors, but bright apricot trees and bright. And Justinia says black, grey, but green for hope. And with both of you have included your trees. And Pedro has said debris, smoke, hands offering bread and receiving colourful socks with holes to be mended. We've got tears falling like rain in a grey place in the same time, helping plants grow. And the picture could be illustrated in dark colours with some tiny light spot, as if the cherry blossom, probably symbolising hope. So let me introduce you to Veronica and her image. This is her. Tomorrow will be better. I hope so, Kitty. And there you can see there's some roots and there's some blooming apricot trees. And I wonder what you think about, and this is a very key question for your students. Now you've heard the story or read the story, now you've seen the image, what comes to mind? I think about, when I see this, I think about lockdown. I think for a lot of people are spending in Ukraine or in certain cities are spending a lot of time, not all cities, but are spending a lot of time indoors, from what I understand. Think of all these poor people. I'm thinking especially maybe of elderly people who, lived through lockdown, could just come through COVID and thought they were going through some freedom now, only to have to go through what they're going through. It's heartbreaking, isn't it? Okay, so that's the idea. This would be my idea, to go through this as a as a whole group. Now, we're going to rush through the next few, okay? This is Romana. I was born in Kiev, and when the war began, I decided to stay. In my apartment, we put boards on the windows and made a sleeping place in the hallway. Friends keep asking, "Are you safe?" How can I be safe when Putin wants to burn my motherland to the ground? I ask for help, not for a powerless nation, but from all the brave hearts here who will fight until the victory of Ukraine. And again, we ask students, what do you see? Can you visualize some kind of illustration? Of course, you're not asking them to really predict. You're asking them to go into their own mind, put themselves into Romana's shoes, and start to think, what could this illustration look like? If you were going to illustrate this experience, what would it look like? The people, the places, the actions, what's happening, the color, the emotion, the composition, and any language. Let me introduce you to Romana and again, so this is quite an angry one, isn't it? And I think you can probably imagine, and I had to be very, very careful when I got in touch with these illustrators. I coordinated it through Olga, who you're going to meet in a moment, because something I've discovered through working with Orist, through many of you met last week, is, and maybe you can confirm this, that our friends in Ukraine are being inundated by texts and emails from people asking if they're safe. And I think that Romana's reply is, well, I might be okay right now, but in a general way, no, I'm not safe. And this is being vented as frustration. And so again, you're asking your students to, comment on what they see. Number 2, Olga's from Kharkiv, which has undergone some terrible, terrible bombardment. 2 weeks before the war began, Olga went to Mexico to see a friend. Being away from those you love in such a terrible time is hard. There's a constant bombing when my parents are near. At first, I felt hopeless. Sometimes I still feel guilty that they see horror while I see a peaceful sky. But I realize I can give them my best support, even from another confidant. Knowing you're not alone helps a lot. Olga's the illustrator that I've worked with in order to get permissions for this. So thank you very much to Olga. And you're asking students to visualize. This is what Olga's piece looks like, which again, you'll notice the colors there are very relevant. 2 more, Yevgeny. Ina, just give me a yes or a no. Would you like to come on screen, Ina? So I made my image in a bomb shelter in my own old primary school. Imagine that. These days we say in Ukraine that "how are you" is a way to say "I love you." More than 500,000 people have become refugees. Right now, I think that's maybe 2.5 million. Am I right? Families are separated. Buses carrying women and children are being shelled. Checking that your loved ones are alive has become a morning ritual. I'm afraid that if the war lasts longer, people will get used to it and switching to something else. Please don't stop supporting Ukraine. Let me show you Yevgenia's photograph. I'm still not sure if I pronounced her name correctly. There's this sort of collage of everybody on their mobile phones, which we do all the time, but this is so different, isn't it? The last one, Maria, we had to flee from Kiev on 25th February. We weren't ready. We didn't believe that war would happen at all. We had just bought a car and planned to travel around Ukraine. So Maria this should have been a time that she was happy, perhaps with a partner and certainly with a new dog. Our dog is adopted and he's anxious. We'd planned to get him used to the car gradually. Instead, our first trip lasted more than 16 hours. The traffic was insane and we hadn't had much to sleep. We took 2 of my friends with their dog and it was hell for both animals as they didn't get on. We spent 2 days driving and finally reached our destination, Chernivtsi, a city in the west of Ukraine where I have relatives. I didn't want to be a refugee. We left our home hoping we can return, but obviously not knowing. Let me introduce you to Maria, whose piece looks like this. Now, I'm going to let me just show you something. If you use this activity with your students, let me just show you something here. I don't know if you all Instagrammers? Here's my Instagram account, and something we can do, we can create collections. So here's a collection. This is a collection I've created of all the images that I've shown you. As long as the screen's not too bright, you should be able to show pictures to your students if there's no strong light as there is in front of me. So you see all of these images. We can show them directly from a mobile phone. And this is really good if you're teaching small groups face to face. And it's also quite good if you're teaching online, on live online video, which is what I'm doing right now. So this is how to make a collection of images, the ones that feature in this lesson plan. You'll find links to all of them below. Let's open the Instagram app. This is my home screen, and the first thing we do to create a new collection is tap on these three little horizontal lines at the top right of the screen, and then you see this little tab icon with saved. Tap on that. Here are my collections. I've got one on design, one on pub signs, a couple of others. Click on the plus at the top right of the screen. Name of collection, we're going to call it Ukrainian illustrators. Have I spelled that right? I do believe I have. Then next, and then done. Okay. There we go, there's the collection, but there's nothing in it. Back to the home screen. Let's first of all find Veronica. Oh, there she is. And this was the image, her illustration. Now I want to save this in my collection. We tap on that little tab icon at the bottom right. Then it says save to collection. Tap on that. I'm going to choose Ukrainian illustrators. So that's the first one saved. Next one, let's go to, there she is. This is Maria. And there was two images here. This is the first one. Save to collection, and the second one was this one. Save to collection. So I'm going to continue like this to create this collection. There should be 8 or 9 images at the end. Okay, now back to my collections here, saved, and you'll see that we've got this collection Ukrainian illustrators, which contains about 8 illustrations. These are the ones that I want to use in my activity. One thing to bear in mind is that there doesn't seem to be a way to order them. So when you come to show them to your students, bear that in mind. You'll have to skip through to find the one you want to show them. All right. So that's Instagram. For the activity itself, everything you need to know is in the lesson plan to be downloaded below. All right, good luck. Thank you for watching, and let us know how you get on. Bye-bye.